All right, Algebra 2, we're going to start looking at Lesson 5.2. This is continuing on, and we are looking at 0 and negative exponents. I will say it over and over and over and over and over and over again. Anything to the 0 power is 1, not 0. I hear it all the time. If you have a to the negative nth power, to get rid of that negative exponent, which is how you always want to show it, you would throw it on the bottom. And same with if you had 1 over a to the negative n. If you wanted to get rid of that negative n, you would bring it to the top as a to the nth. Now, we're going to start off by talking a little bit of scientific notation, which most of you did really great with this in middle school. Remember the decimal rate here is after 458. Because we are going 10 to the negative fourth, 1, 2, 3, 4, we're going to move the decimal here. And you do have to fill in the space with a 0, so your answer would be 0.0458. All right, this is where it gets fun. This looks like a complete mess, doesn't it? So I, once again, always draw my fraction line, if I have room here to draw it, equals fraction line. And I'm just going to know, hey, anything to the 0 power is 1, and anything times 1 is itself. So anything to the 0 power, I just cancel out. All of the negatives I flip. So this 6 to the negative first, I'm going to put on the bottom. These I'm just going to flip, so I'm going to have x to the first on top and x squared on bottom. Z cubed stays on top, but this z to the negative second will come on top as z to the second, so it's going to go in the numerator. Now, when I go to solve this, 6 stays on bottom. Where do the x's go, top or bottom? Good, they go to the bottom as x to the first. Z's will stay on top. When I multiply, I add the exponents z to the 5th. So it looks like my answer here is z to the 5th over 6x. All right, what about something as messy as this? I like to look at this bit by bit. So the first thing I'm going to look at is that m squared, and I'm obviously going to move that m squared right to the bottom. So I'm going to redraw each vinculum, keep the 4 and the n, and I'm going to put this m squared to the bottom. Now, because all of this is to the negative first, I would flip the whole thing. I wouldn't take the time to distribute it, because that would be a step and then you'd have to flip it. So I'm just going to flip the whole thing and know all of that is to the first power. And I could write to the first power here, but I don't really need it because anything to the first power is itself. And now you could either cross reduce. I like to mix it all together. So I'm going to mix it first. 4 times 3 is 12 n squared. Now obviously if this was a square, we'd have to get rid of that first. And n and m squared times m to the 3rd is n m to the 5th. And then from here, would the n's go on the top or the bottom? Good, they would go on the top as n, and m to the 5th will go on the bottom. All right, before we get moving, I'm going to talk about one common mistake. Do you see how this -3 and -9 are here? Remember, these are still negative numbers. These negative numbers, we're going to continue to just reduce them as negative numbers, so that would be a -1/3. Now from here, with the exponents, remember the negative exponent would tell you to move it to the top or bottom, so this would be a to the 5th on top and a to the 4th on the bottom. B to the 5th stays on top, and b to the 6th moves to the numerator. So my common mistake here is a lot of people like to flip this one. We do not flip it. We do not. They're just negative numbers. All right, and moving on, let's reduce. I know I have -1/3. A's end up on the top as a to the 1st and b to the 11th. And the last one that I'm going to do, I want you guys to see what's happening here. The first thing I probably would do is I would probably distribute, because it's being multiplied, I can distribute this too. So I have negative fifth to the negative second times 2 to the negative fourth. Whew. Now what's happening? This negative fifth is moving to the bottom, 1 over negative fifth to the second, and 1 over 2 to the fourth. Now notice, because of these parentheses, all of this remains in parentheses, because remember this was all squared. So I have to square 1 over negative 5 squared as 1 over 25. And 1 over 2 to the fourth, well, 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, is 1 over 16. The final answer to this would be 1 over 400. And let me just remind you, if you're given a TI-84, put that in your calculator to double check it to make sure that you're doing it correctly. Great job.